Hi, everybody, and welcome to Quarantine Cafe. We are here right now with my good buddy Jeff Lehmberg, great upright bass player, jazz musician, classical musician, probably does other stuff too that I don't even know about. How are you, Jeff? How's your quarantine? I know you're in Hong Kong where there isn't really a quarantine. How's life? How are
Yeah,
you doing,
we're doing good. Yeah, in Hong Kong, we're doing much better than the rest of the world. So we're not quite back to normal, but we're getting there. So no, it's been good. Yeah, we had our first with the orchestra here, the Hong Kong Philharmonic. We had our first little project since January, just this last Thursday and Friday. So.
Oh, cool. That's awesome. I'll ask you a little bit about that in a little bit. But first, can you tell us a little bit about what you're about to play for us?
Yeah. So I am doing two movements of a Bach cello suite. I'll be doing the Bach cello suite number 5. We'll be doing what are they called? I can't remember the gavottes. So it's the last two movements of the Bach cello suite, the gavottes and the jig from Bach cello suite number 5. And I'll be doing my own little solo arrangement of the jazz standard Nature Boy.
Okay, very cool. Let's give that a listen, and then we will be right back with Jeff Lehmberg. And we're back with Jeff Lehmberg. Hey Jeff, so you just said that you guys did, I guess the first thing that you've done with the Hong Kong Philharmonic in a while, right? Like, so how long have you guys been off? And what are you guys doing now? I guess you can't really like play in like a packed concert hall, right?
That's right. So we've been off since it was, I guess, Chinese New Year, which was basically the end of January. We had like a Chinese New Year break for a few days, and then we just didn't come back.
Hmm.
Yeah, so almost 6 months.
Wow.
And yeah, and we've just done. There's been a few before this week. There was a few smaller little chamber music projects that again, you're right, there's no audience. So it's all been either live streaming, a little bit of live streaming or recording. And so we did this. I think it'll be not live streaming, but a recorded thing. We did a little Father's Day sort of concert with most of the orchestra recording sort of performance. So yeah, to an empty hall, which is very strange.
Huh. Okay. Yeah. So what did you guys play? Just out of curiosity.
We did a bunch of, let's say, smaller pieces. So we did and I have to try and remember. We did a Dvorak. Was it Hungarian? Maybe both the Hungarian dances, Dvorak and Brahms. There's both Dvorak and Brahms have a whole sort of list of these Hungarian or Romanian dances.
Yeah.
We did that. We did a Rossini overture, and we did a little the Spanish dance, which is the chocolate dance from the Nutcracker.
Okay.
So another little small piece, and we did a piece by Mexican composer Marquez. I don't remember his first name. Arturo Marquez. So he's a modern Mexican composer, but a very nice it's called Danzón Number 2. Quite well known.
Cool.
Piece. So nice little mix of stuff to ease ourselves back in.
Yeah. Very cool. So back to what you actually played for us today. So you did a couple pieces by Bach. You said you did the Gavotte and the Gigue.
That's right. Yeah.
And so those are, it's like, speaking of dances, because you mentioned Hungarian dances, like those were dances, right?
That's right. That's right. Yeah.
So here's a question, because I always wondered this, because I never had any clue. And I know that like a minuet is a type of dance and a gavotte is a type of dance, but like, do you have any idea what kind of dances those actually are? Like,
no, I don't. I mean, I don't. I mean, I imagine the gigue being sort of, it's a gigue is like a jig, right?
Okay, yeah, that would make a lot of sense.
I imagine it being, in fact, it may even have been like considered an English dance, which then became, they used the French name, of course, but
yeah.
So I imagine there's a sense in which I imagine it being like a jig.
Cool. So I mean, so you're like a pretty accomplished classical musician and jazz musician. Like, so why did you pick these particular pieces?
I was talking to talking to some of my colleagues or other classical musicians, especially string players, and sort of saying, I was complaining because I was complaining about how hard it was to get these pieces together, to feel like I could play them well, and like sort of talking about that and about Bach and almost all my other string player friends have been sort of playing and working on Bach during this time of not doing other work. So there might be something about Bach, these solo pieces. First of all, they're solo pieces. There's no piano accompaniment.
Yep.
There might be something about Bach that string players especially turn to, either when they have a lot of time alone, or there might even.
Yeah, you're okay. Jeff is frozen. before we got cut off, you were talking a little bit about how string players always return to Bach, and like now that you have nothing to do, like of course you're practicing Bach. So why
Exactly.
do you think that is? Is it about the technical aspect or the musicality of it, or like both?
Partially it's these the Bach there's Bach solo suites for both for cello and I guess for violin they're called partitas and sonatas.
Mm,
So there is this sort of set of amazing solo string pieces, so you can do them by yourself. There's no piano or anything needed, um, and and so I think it's partially that. I think it is the technical aspect. It's sort of a great. It definitely gives you stuff to work on. But I do think maybe there's just something about Bach that a lot of us find very not only rewarding, but maybe sort of soothing in sort of times of um, uh, uncertainty or distress.
mm.
It's I think it's at least partially that.
That's interesting because so I've actually been shedding Bach too lately, on flute. Like, and I never really practiced classical music on flute before, but I like, of course, the first thing I would do is look at Bach, I guess, because he's Bach.
Right.
Um, and so the first thing is I'm probably going to show my ignorance here, but you mentioned that the violin, the solo pieces are called partitas and sonatas. But like, I thought that the sonatas all had like harpsichord or something.
There are also, I think there might also be accompanied like violin sonatas. So I think they're both actually.
Cool. Okay.
Yeah. So I think you're
Yeah.
only partially showing your ignorance.
Yeah, just because the flute piece I've been working on has a harpsichord accompaniment.
And is your flute piece? I don't again. I'll show my ignorance now. Is it actually for flute or is
Yeah,
it a violin transcription? It's a flute. Okay.
yeah. It's he did a bunch of flute sonatas, I guess. I've been working on the second one, the E minor flute sonata. And then the other thing I was going to say is that it's funny that you say that that Bach's music is soothing because like maybe it's because I don't come from a classical background, but to me Bach's music is like super hip, you know.
Oh, it's also that. It's yes. It's. I think it's also that. There's this sense that if you dig in to you kind of never can.
Yeah, it's
There's
like
so much.
really brilliant. Like this piece that I've been working on, I guess there are all these weird like leaps and like I don't know. He's got like a really weird way of looking at scales almost, I think is like the way I would put it. I don't know if you would agree with that or
Absolutely.
yeah.
Yeah.
Man, Bach, what a total badass.
I know. Yeah. I guess there's a reason why we keep coming back. And the other thing you mentioned, you asked why would we be turning to this now? So in orchestras, like big symphony orchestras, we don't play that much Bach. We don't play that much stuff
Hmm.
before, let's say, Haydn. So a lot of the Baroque stuff we just don't play, just because it doesn't use all of the forces that are needed. I think especially in the West, there are now a lot of dedicated early music groups that are more likely to kind of do that. So it also gives us a chance to play one of the sort of great composers that we just don't get to play that much in orchestra.
So that's really interesting. So you touched on that a little bit, but so is that mainly because of the instrumentation, like because like Baroque instruments were different, or is it because of the fact that they were usually written for smaller ensembles, or is it both, or why is that?
It might be both, but especially the second. There
Okay.
may be orchestras feel like, if we um, we have this group of 100 people and
Yeah.
people are paying to come listen to the pieces that take advantage of these big forces. And so I think orchestras feel like they generally want to program stuff that takes advantage of the bigger forces. um, so yeah, but I mean, I guess I do wish we still did some more earlier stuff.
Cool. So yeah, here's another question. So obviously you've been working on Bach, but you said you've been out of, I don't know, you've been on vacation for 6 months or whatever, right? Like,
Yeah.
so what have you been working on?
uh, yeah, some of that, a bit, uh, again, luckily, we were able to get out of a really strict isolation quite early here. So I have, even though there haven't, live gigs are just starting to come back
Yep.
now, but it's been the case where you could meet up with people and jam. So I've been, just getting together small groups every once in a while and jamming and working on stuff. So talking about jazz.
Yeah. Cool.
So that's been, we're so lucky, and I'm sure because of your history in Hong Kong, you would know all the people that I would be jamming with. But yeah, so there's been doing some of that. Yeah, I guess musically that's kind of it.
Cool. So here's another question. Because you just mentioned jazz music and that you've been working on jazz music, and like obviously, I know you well, I wouldn't say primarily, but like as a person who I've worked with before, I know you primarily as a jazz musician. And how has your background in classical music kind of affected your jazz playing and vice versa? Especially with
Um,
regards to something like like a solo Bach piece, where nobody's conducting you and nobody's like telling you how to play it. Like, is there something about your jazz playing that sort of feeds that or that influences it? And what is that, I guess?
I would like to think so. And we talked about so much of the Bach stuff being dances,
Yep.
right? And so with jazz, so much of, especially as a bass player, as a rhythm section, it's so much about rhythm and keeping the rhythm interesting and moving. And and so I guess when I found working on the Bach stuff, how do you make it the rhythm sort of keep flowing, how to not to sound stiff. We're, especially as a bass player, a classical bass player trying to play Bach, we're trying so hard to to make it kind of work. It's not written for us, it's written for the cello, and so we're trying so hard to make it work. And then it's
Well, God damn it. All right. It happened again. So I promise that's the last time that our
There's
our
always
connection's
one,
gonna
isn't
die.
there, Colin? There's always one making things difficult.
Yeah.
I just have to stand out.
Yeah, that's true. This is going to be like a very special episode of Quarantine
Right.
Cafe. But anyway, you were talking about the idea of rhythm and how, as a jazz player, especially a jazz bass player, that rhythmic concept kind of informs your playing when you do like a solo bass thing by Bach.
Yeah, I would like to think so. Yeah, because as I was saying, it's very difficult. We're trying so hard to make the piece work. It's a cello piece that we're bringing to a different instrument, bass,
Yep.
and so it can very easily sound sort of square.
Huh. Yeah.
And and so one of the challenges is to make it flow
Interesting.
and swing. I think there's a lot of, I do think that a lot of Baroque musicians and composers, there was a sense of swing in the music that it's kind of fun to try and bring out a little bit.
Very cool. Okay. Well, thank you so much for being on the show. And like, obviously I could keep asking you questions forever, and we'll probably chat a little bit more after this is over. But
Absolutely.
is there anything that you have online that you play on, or that the Hong Kong Phil has online that you would suggest that people go listen to?
Maybe what I can do is, I think there's a Hong Kong Philharmonic YouTube page, and you can also go to I think it's hkphil.org is the Hong Kong webpage. Maybe I can give I know I'll give you some links and you can post them.
Yeah, please do.
Whatever. But I think the Hong Kong Philharmonic or HK Phil YouTube place might be a good start. I think we do actually have a lot of stuff. We have a lot of cool stuff that people can check out.
Yeah, like I know, I don't know if it's on Spotify, but I know there's a lot of Wagner that you guys have recorded in the last few years.
That's right. I'm sure it's Spotify. I think they might even be doing sort of the street, having some of the video or at least the audio stuff on YouTube now.
Cool. Okay, great. And we'll post that up. And is there anything else that you would like to say to the audience of Quarantine Cafe?
Just hang in there. I know we're not done with all this yet, but hopefully we'll be able to get out and get some fresh air for a little bit before things may hopefully don't get too much worse again. But thank you so much for having me, and it's great to talk and share.
Well, thank you so much. That was Jeff Lehmberg, and I'm your host Callum, and we will see you guys on Wednesday at noon.